And I promised to change up the order so that it wasn't always alphabetical from A's. And so I'm going to start on page 2 with, I was going to start with Harris, but she's not here. Oh, there she is, Dorothy. Okay.
I'm here.
So you're up first, and then Harzuski, Howe, Real, Rumsey, Story, Swift, and then we'll go to page 1 with APON, etc. Okay.
Sure.
So,
I haven't done too much, like to show more so. So I've looked at a lot of assets. I've watched some tutorials on things I want to implement in the game, but like I don't really have much to show for that.
That's okay. How are the tutorials? What are they?
They're pretty good. I've watched a couple on like some basic character customization, nothing crazy yet, but and also just kind of refamiliarizing myself with Unity because it's been a year.
Yeah, I know that trick. So this is not a critique of you, Dorothy, but as each of you start your little talk, remind us what your topic is. So
oh yes, of course. I'm doing, I think if you want my advanced topic, I want to do character customization. Is there anything, I don't have like a great amount about it yet. I want to do a story mode game.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it right now.
Okay. Any questions, comments, or suggestions for Ms. Harris? No? Okay. Harzuski, Matt, you're up.
All right. So my topic is procedural world generation using Purlin noise. And would you like me to share my screen and show off what I got so far?
Oh, yeah. Let me, I got to change some setting here. Multiple who can share all participants? Okay, go ahead.
All right, let me give it a shot here. Share. Okay, can you see my Unity window here?
Yep.
All right, because I can't see that when I'm sharing. All right, so you can see right here I have a plane that has basic Purlin noise on right here. I have a custom editor that you can like change and it will regenerate it in real time. You can change like different parameters, like cause different things to happen with it, pretty much. And then beyond that, it can then colorize it and produce markers for what will eventually be terrain or water, different heights, like snow or sand or stuff. Most have been following a series of videos by Sebastian Legge. He's dealt with this in depth. The next step is to you'll actually make terrain like meshes from this, but this is like in the precursor.
Right. The next step, yeah. Next step is meshes. I know his tutorial goes on to infinite worlds, whereas you move across the world, it predictively generates a grid adjacent to it. Are you going to follow that far, or?
I'm probably going to try to aim for infinite if I can.
Yeah,
because I really like the idea of that. If I can't, then I'm going to come up with something to at least hide the edges of the world, like basically painting some high values toward the edge or something so that you can't see over the edge or something.
Yeah. I know in his infinite world, he goes into threading.
I think so, yeah.
And he did it before the jobs system was available. And boy, if you could figure out how to adapt his threading system, which is a fairly convoluted thing, to the job system, which is Unity's implementation of direct threaded code, that'd be great, because I know his has hiccups even with threads.
Yeah, that's things I'm looking at
It
closely.
doesn't
Is
so much if you're walking across the terrain, that's not bad, but I did it with an airplane, and so
yeah,
my character was moving pretty fast, and it was generating worlds pretty quickly, and it produced some hiccups. But yeah, that's great, and it's a good tutorial, and you'll definitely learn stuff. So good. Anything else you want to say?
no, just it's something I'm looking at heavily. Is I'm aware that it's like a 6+ year old video series. I'm looking at what I can do differently in Unity 2020, since it's a lot has changed since then. Like I want to potentially see if I can apply shader graph to it in some way, maybe.
Okay, that'd be cool.
I'm not sure how it's going to fit in or not. So I figure I know he writes like a shader at one point in the series. I haven't looked at it closely, but I figure it's probably something that could be done with the newer systems and might end up looking better even.
Okay. From my point of view, please, universal render pipeline, not high def, because
yeah,
high def kills my computer.
Yeah.
Any comments, questions, suggestions for Matt? And remember to state your name when you ask a question or comment.
So I'm Story. Were you going to do 3D terrain?
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
so I guess the different colors is going to kind of also just represent how high the terrain is going to be, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's basically a colorized height map where the
Right.
colors are representing what kind of texturing will be in the area.
So will there be like a higher fidelity of color range at some point, so it's smoother looking?
I probably should have gone into it a little bit better. So it's a similar technique to how Minecraft works under the hood, only they start with Purlin noise, and then they define what the biomes or whatever will be. And then they start using a technique called marching cubes, which is basically like raycasting, to create a volume out of the two-dimensional pixels. So it's using it as a height map.
Interesting.
And then with this tutorial is going beyond that, and not just creating boxes, but creating smooth meshes out of it.
Cool.
There's one fairly simple setting somewhere when you define the texture, and I forget what it is, but it's a one-line switch in your code to make it blend the colors instead of having abrupt jumps. It's like, instead of clamp, I forget what it is. Sebastian does it, so you'll see. Any other questions, comments, suggestions for Matt's procedural world? One issue I ran into it was getting a proper collider on it so that you could walk around. That wasn't an issue, but it's possible. All right, well, if there are no questions, we're to Andrew Howe.
Yeah, so I haven't gotten a ton done this week, but I've started work a little bit on my procedural world. Oh, sorry. My game is 2D top-down dungeon crawler, but it's on a beach and a little bit more fun like that, I want to say. I haven't gotten a ton done though, but I've started to do a little bit of pixel art into my enemies and very briefly looking into world generation, but nothing serious yet.
Okay. There is a Unity procedural dungeon series in Unity Learn. I haven't been through it, so I don't know what it does, but
I'll definitely have to look into that. Yeah, I haven't seen that.
Okay. Anything more? Any questions, comments? Go ahead, Andrew, if you've got more to say.
I was just going to say, I don't have any more to say today.
Okay. That's all he had to say, was he doesn't have many more to say. Any questions, comments?
Story. Did you say that you were going to do all your own pixel art?
At least I'm hoping to do a lot of my own pixel art, at least for the enemies and main characters. And I want to do my own weapon design and stuff like that. But I don't know. I'll probably look into the asset store too a little bit for things.
Not that I know much about it, but like what resolution were you looking at?
Probably like 16-bit.
So this is going to be a Unity 2D world.
Yeah.
There is a 2D game kit that comes with a ton of stuff and a lot of good examples. The kinds of things you can do with foreground, background kind of things, so that as you move across, the things move at different rates, so that it appears that the trees are further away than the foreground, you know, so that as the perspective moves, it gives you a sense of depth, even though you've just got planes in 2D. And of course, the other 2D top-down is do everything in 3D and just have an orthographic camera from above kind of thing. But you're actually going to do the pixel version kind of thing.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking right now anyways.
Are you gonna animate your pixel sprites?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Any questions, comments, suggestions for Mr. Howe?
Actually, this is Apon. I may have said this last time, I can't remember, but I did find a website that's really good for animating quick pixel art. It's called like let me get the name of it. It's PISKEL. I think it's supposed to be pronounced like pixel. But it's really good. It's what I'm using for mine. That I was going to show later, but it's a really good website if you're ever looking to make like 2D pixel art and animating them. You can easily import it into Unity and stuff.
Okay, good, thanks. Which reminds me, I am trying to watch chat for questions, comments, suggestions in there as well. But I do appreciate people speaking. So nothing else for Mr. Howe, Mr. Real. Peter.
Great. Yeah, can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Great. I can actually share my screen. I have a little bit of progress done.
Okay.
I know it might not look like much, but I totally underestimated Unity once again. I wasn't too familiar with the interface, so it took me a while to get going. I actually ran into, well, let me tell you what I have first. So right now I have 1,000 by 1,000 terrain with a racetrack on it. This racetrack is modeled from an F1 track that I found online. So what I did here was, this is just standard assets. I imported some other stuff here. I have easy roads, which I use to make my road in this.
Easy roads, great.
Yep. And it works great. The only issue I had was that I was running the free version and I ran into like a 30-minute loop where I was trying to figure out why. So the way this works is if I click on my easy road here, if I click on road network, and you can get the points, forget exactly how. So there's little connection objects, and when you make a point, you click and it'll make a point and it'll continuously build this road. But one of the issues I had was, as you see here, if I click on my road and then I would try and create a point, it would just immediately select the terrain. So I ran into an issue with that where I was trying to figure out why I couldn't get the road to place. In short, I was running the free version. I needed to get the paid version, so I did that. And then I restarted and then I built this again. And yeah, so this is just my road. I've been playing around with the easy road. A lot of it too, I spent probably an hour just detailing the map. I had some problems with the trees colliding with the road. And if I go in here, the grass was phasing through the road. So it was just like a big, just a big pain in the butt trying to get the map to look how I wanted. But this is where I needed to start. I needed to start with building a map for the car. So this is where I'm at now. I also have, I think if I go to imports, I have this fence layout tool where I'm going to create in the corners, there's going to be guardrails and whatnot, just to give it more of like a actual feel of a racetrack. But this is what I got so far. I know it's not much. I got a skybox that I imported. So this is just the map.
That's great.
And then
That's like real progress.
Yeah.
I mean, Easy Roads is great. I've got the free version. The paid version I can't afford, but I'm on it.
yeah, neither
But-
could I.
Well,
It's
there's
good
no
tool.
textbook in this class, so there's nothing wrong with spending a little bit of money on high test tools. So that's very cool. Do you plan to move into 3D a little bit with your map, or is it always going to be flat?
No, yeah. So this is just the first map. This is the grassy map.
Yeah.
I do plan to have a bunch of different maps. Right now, I was just trying to get something done with Easy Roads, like try and figure that out. I didn't get too creative with the map design. This is like my grassy areas. You could see up here. That's what it's named. I have some other maps in my mind that I haven't built. So yes, there will be a variation of maps.
Uh-huh. And the road layout is based on cubic splines. Like you have these control points that you can place and move around, and
Yes.
the road adapts to it.
Yes.
What would be tremendously cool is if you could figure out how to throw random points and assign them as the spline control points and have a procedurally generated racetrack.
That would be pretty crazy.
It
That'd
would
be
be
pretty
pretty
crazy.
crazy.
And yeah, I finally got the points to show up. So if you see here, like
Yeah.
I can click on the move tool and select the points, and the racetrack will
And-
transform to whatever I do. But this interface was a huge pain in the butt. Like actually creating this racetrack alone took, 30 minutes after I had to detail all the curves. Like a lot of the times when you create the curves, the lines themselves will be distorted. And, if this is like moved in a lot, you could see the lines start to get weird and the corners get weird. So you got to spend some time just massaging it a little bit.
Yep, now it's below the grass there too.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. See, that's another thing tried to figure that out, but that's just like yeah,
Yeah,
it's a pain in the butt, but once you zoom out, see, it's not. So it's crazy to
uh-huh.
say the least. I'm
Okay.
figuring it out as I go.
Well, that's all very cool. So any comments, questions for Peter?
I have a question. This is Apon again. What kind of other maps were you thinking about? Like thematically, I guess.
Sure. So definitely something that I wanted to explore was like the car physics and to all different environments. So as you can see, this one's pretty flat. I was thinking of a hilly one where I could explore acceleration and gravity's effect on that. Also snow and rain. So weather conditions on effects on tire traction and stuff like that. So hilly, flat, rainy, snowy, and that's about all I got so far. And also a dirt track that would, I think, pretty cool. Easy Roads actually has inside, I think it's in the materials or it's in textures, maybe roads. Yeah, they actually have a dirt road, so that would be cool. Definitely do something like that. Yeah, but those 5: hilly, flat, snowy, rainy, and dirt.
And on the dirt, your car will make dust trails, right?
Yeah, that's a pretty easy effect to do. I think that's actually in the standard assets for cars, so
Okay,
that would be cool.
that would be cool. Anything else for Mr. Real?
DeFormolo here. Are you looking to make this racing against computers mostly, or you think you're going to try and make it like a multiplayer thing?
Honestly, it's a time trial game. I think the physics enough is a lot to bite and chew off. So AI was not something I was super interested in, or multiplayer. So right now it's just a time trial. There'll be a start and a finish. It'll tell you your time. Each map will log your time during runtime. So you'll be able to see that. But no, you're not actually racing against anybody. Certainly would be a cool expansion though.
And a tremendous time sink.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Because with the to get an AI car to traverse this thing, you're going to have to do a waypoint circuit, and the waypoint circuit that keeps the cars on the track is a tremendous amount of fiddling because the track's not very wide. So, you know, keeping your cars tracking on the track is really a pain. And I've tried the Nav Mesh solution and it doesn't work. At least not for me, but maybe it could. So any other comments, questions, suggestions for what looks to be a really interesting game?
Stored here. When you get to, I just thought of this, but when you get to like actually tuning in your cars, when you get to that point, have you heard of BeamNG Drive?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
Certainly some good YouTube videos on that on that
Wait.
video game.
Well, I was just gonna say like the driving in that game, because it's really intense, like, or at least the physics of it is like driving on the different conditions, like you were saying, like ice, snow, dirt. It feels really good. So, like it, like when you go to tuning in your cars, it might be interesting, like playing some of that and then go into your game to see like how it feels, or be like, what should driving on good dirt feel like, you know?
True. Yeah,
But-
thank you. I appreciate that.
But if you don't know or already have it, then you don't want to shell out even more money. But it's a really cool game to mess around with.
Sweet.
Yeah, sure. That's the advice here. Go play a video game.
It's really cool. I mean,
I
I don't know
know,
if
they're
anybody's
all
seen
really
it,
cool.
but soft body physics.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Don't be shy. And I'm trying to watch chat here to see if anyone has a question in the chat. Matt says you could add limited AI obstacles like deer, LOL. Yeah, okay, great idea. Great idea. So stop sharing your screen and we'll move on to the next victim. Ms. Rumsey, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
So for this class, I'm working on a haptic maze on iOS mobile. And for this past week, I haven't been able to get haptics quite yet, but I was working on iOS movement. And it turns out there's like no good movement systems like already in place. So I was kind of Frankensteining some code and I was able to actually get something. And I'll show you on here. So it's just if you swipe, it kind of moves until you stop touching the screen. So recognize which way you swipe. And that's kind of what I got so far.
That's great. That's great. You're headed off into a world that's so different from what we've been playing with here with touch.
Yeah.
As I recall, with touch, it can recognize if you've got two fingers down and, you know, all kinds of stuff. So good luck.
Thank you.
That's progress. So I'm going to count that as a demo, even though you didn't share a screen. No, seriously, I keep track of who does demos, and because that's a sign of actual progress as opposed to I've just watched some videos and you know,
Yeah.
demos. Great, wonderful. Anything else?
I think that was the most visual progress I got. Yeah.
That's great. I think in your, I haven't finished reading all the proposals yet, but I think in yours you mentioned some haptic kit for iOS that you got.
Yes. So it looks like Unity matched with Lowfelt, the haptics company, and they have like a haptics plugin that's just like $15. So I've been looking into that and it looks like it's pretty useful and there's a lot to it. So
That would be a worthwhile investment, I think, rather than reinvent the wheel yourself. Go find somebody's high tech, make sure they have good documentation before you spend the money.
yeah, they definitely do. There's so much there.
Okay, Well, that'd be
So-
great. I look forward to hearing more as this develops.
Yeah.
Any questions, comments for Ms. Rumsey? And I'm looking chat. There's nothing new in chat, is there? Oops, that's the wrong button. Matt, the joys of embedded system programming. Are you using OS's Sprite framework or Apple or game engine of some sort?
I'm just using Unity's built-in stuff for now.
Okay.
Rosen, how do you pronounce your name?
Roshin.
Roshin. How do you deploy to the iPhone? Is that like is that through Unity or is that like do you have to work around like iOS thing?
They have a nice little app called Unity Remote 5.
Yeah.
And I think it's just the past couple of years or so that they've got it working in a usable way. So
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
Is it and it works pretty well?
yeah,
Okay. Okay. Because I found that anytime you have to deploy to a phone, it's like an absolute nightmare.
Yeah, and that's the great
I've
thing
heard
about
that.
Unity Remote is you just plug it in and
Yep.
play from the editor. So you don't have that cycle of compile, upload, and all that. It
Mhm.
really is a wonderful tool. I did some AR stuff
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
on a tablet for a while. You know, you could have the tablet and see the little dinosaur sitting on your desk, kind of thing. It's very cool. And it's up to version 5 now, so that means it's
Yeah.
probably pretty robust. Anything else for Ms. Rumsey? Roshan, Roshan.
Roshin.
Roshan.
It's Irish.
I guessed that.
I had a question about your like your movement. Like it looked like you could just swipe and hold anywhere in the thing, the block would move. So are you going to like leave it for the user to touch anywhere on the screen to move, or are you gonna like have them kind of restricted to one little area?
I felt like when I play mobile games, I hate having it restricted to like one little joystick in the corner. I like having it like anywhere on the screen.
Yeah,
So
that does sound like a cleaner experience.
That's why we write our own video games, is so we can make them the way we like them, right?
yeah.
Okay, moving on, Mr. Story, you're up.
Awesome. So I'm going to show what I have at the moment.
And remind us your topic too.
That's right. So I'm doing a puzzle game with like a whole bunch of different attributes that you can add to items. So rewind time and a portal is going to be the biggest one, but then like resizing thing, I can't remember my list, but
Yeah, I saw it. You have a good long list.
yeah, I know for sure the portal and rewinding time are going to be definitely going to be in there, because I think those could be the coolest to make puzzles with. So let's try to do this sort of nice. So to start off with, I knew I wanted to have because of the portals, looking through a portal, I didn't want it just to be like whatever tool I end up using, like a floating gun. Like I wanted you to be able to actually be able to see the character. So, but it's going to be first person. So I thought that I would have to go ahead and do kind of like a third person character, just put the camera in the head. So that's what I started working on here. But I also had to relearn how to do like character controllers and character animations and stuff. So this is what I have at the moment. Maybe if it'll play. So we got the character and I can like move around and sprint and stuff. I can also jump, but the jump is really lame. It's like a little hop. It's not good at all. So but I think that's because to make it easier on myself, I was using the root motion for all of these animations. So I was letting the animation decide how fast I went and stuff. So I'm thinking I may have to switch to like just doing the animation and then program how fast and how high things happen.
Yep. A really nice effect there that just appeared was when you turned away from the sun, your character casts a shadow, which is, you know, even though you can't really see your character from your camera, just having the shadow of your character appear in the scene is really a great effect.
Yeah.
So that's very immersive and cool.
Well, that's kind of why I wanted to also do like an actual character, because when you look down, I don't like it when games it's just like you don't see anything. Like that's weird. I should be able to see my feet when I'm looking at my feet.
Yeah, we should be able to see our feet.
But so some of the problems I'm running into is just like, you know, jumping and stuff. And then also I wanted to have kind of like shooter games where you're holding, you can see the little tool that I'm going to be using. I'm like having a hard time finding a way to, well, I know I can blend two different animations, like holding a weapon and like my walking stuff. I've seen people do that. It's just finding an animation to hold. So that's hard. But then also like when I start to sprint, you can like see my head and that's annoying. So I'm not sure like if there's going to be a good camera placement or well, I don't know. There's just weird finicky things.
There are lots of issues and
Yeah.
you'll fiddle with them.
Yeah, but
I'm going to do Nav Mesh later, but one of the things I do in Nav Mesh later is a character, and there may be some information in the subsequent lecture that might help you with this setup I'll try and mention it when I go through the Nav Mesh thing, what might help you, because you might be able to just use Unity components, their third person character, and use the move, which would then have proper jump and so forth in it.
right.
Okay, that's good. And I love the fact that it casts a shadow. That's great. Very immersive. Any questions, comments, suggestions for Elijah?
Pluki here. So you said you're going to do portals. Are you going to link up like a camera object to the portal so you can like see through it? Is that what you're planning to do?
Yeah, that's what I'm following a tutorial, to be honest, because that seems tricky and there's a lot of math, but yeah, that's what it seems like a lot of people are going to be doing. It's like they're going to shoot a camera through the portal to then project what's on it. Yeah, there's going to be cameras involved.
There will be cameras.
Yeah.
Cameras and
I can't.
And if I recall correctly, some custom shaders too.
Yeah, I think so.
It'll be really interesting when you point two cameras at each other and to get like the infinite mirror effect.
Yeah, so that like thinking ahead to like, or at least just playing the game Portal was kind of what I wanted them to feel like, is like looking through the portal, seeing yourself. Like I knew I was going to need an actual character. So that's why I started here, because I didn't want to end up just playing, like building it out like there's just going to be an arm, and then when I get to that point realizing, oh, it's just a floating arm, being really disappointed.
Planning ahead, good idea.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions, comments, suggestions for the rewinding time portal clone? No, fusion. It's fusion, right? Okay.
Sure.
All right. So stop sharing, and Mr. Swift, are you here? Forrest, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm here. So I don't really have enough to show a demo today. I'm mostly just working on trying to get the multiplayer working so that you can see the other players' movement in the game once I have like even that basic multiplayer setup, I feel like it'll be a lot easier to build on top of that. But I got to get that set up first.
And
Other than
which multiplayer system are you using? Are you using UNet or the new one? I forget what it's called, net something.
I was planning on just
Oh,
using
God.
the native Unity netcode.
Netcode. Yeah, okay, that's the new one.
Yeah. And yeah, I haven't mostly what I've been working on is getting I posted that RPG character that I was planning on using. I've been getting that into my project and trying to get the animations rigged up and stuff. It's using kind of a legacy system, I think, for some of the animations, so it's making it a little more difficult, but it should be okay.
Okay. Cool. Multiplayer is hard, but you're only going to have 50 players, so I want to watch that that testing session when you gather 50 people together. And
yeah, that would be awesome. That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, 4 will be plenty, I think. Any comments, questions for Mr. Swift? Nope. All right, so page 2, Mr. Apon, you're up.
Okay, let me just, I have all my stuff on my actual PC. I don't have my camera for it, so I'm just gonna have to join the Zoom call with that as well so I can share screens because I have some things I want to show. But my project was the procedurally generated map going through like a dungeon, having a turn-based combat. Let's see here. So it says I joined it with my other computer, so I can just share my screens here. Share. Awesome. So you can see right here. So I did some pixel art. First is what I wanted to do. I wanted to make sure I get like a couple of just characters. So I use this website called Pixel, and you could see like I just made some quick stances for like the player characters. So this would be one of them. It's a really good website. I'd recommend if anyone's here is planning on doing any pixel art. It lets you just save all of them. I have a couple other characters I made. This one I just quickly made. I just kind of put them together just to get some animation. I don't plan on having a ton because I'm not an animator, and I want to keep it pretty.
Looks good. That's a very convincing looking little character.
Yeah, a lot of it was kind of cheating. I kind of just ended up copying the same. I made it once and I could copy and then drag down like their legs and then just slightly change it. And then so I have 3 characters in mind at the moment to start the game. Like 3 different archetypes. One of them would be like a tank like this one. The other guy's like an attacker, and then the first guy I showed off would be like more of like the mage. I had a lot of fun with this one, especially. This one was like definitely my favorite to work on. And then I made like 2 quick enemies. I just made a little slime guy. He just kind of blinks and squeezes. You actually can see it at the top right. I don't know how well you can see it there, but he kind of blinks and squishes down.
Oh lordy.
I had a lot. This one, honestly, I mostly wanted to start this because I knew it was just gonna be fun just to see what I could come up with. And then finally was this robot that I chose a bunch of colors, and then someone said that looks like water going through it, so I just made him like a earth robot thing.
That's very cool.
Yeah, that was like my main thing I worked on, but I also did
Was this
start.
a paid for tool or?
No, this is a completely free website. I can send the link in as well. It's really good. And then I also did start some AI. I found a not AI UI. I started this. It's a really good free asset I found on the store, just like with the text boxes and stuff. And I just made a quick mock-up of what I imagined the game would look like, where you'll have your 3 characters on the side, your health, your armor ability, and how fast you can go. And I've been following this video series, slowly creating this kind of little by little. I can't actually see the play button because the Zoom is.
Yeah, I know, and then a pain in the ass.
Yeah, there we go. So I can drag it down. It actually right now I have it testing, so it has 2 characters. instead of 3. Like it will automatically fill based on how many characters. But there's a speed bar that fills up and that lets you know when your turn's ready for that character. I have a couple things going on. I also have it right now, so the Arcto character will take damage no matter what I do right now, just to see if the health bar would go down, which it does. But yeah, I've been working on this a lot, mostly on the pixel art because it's something I can just kind of do while listening to a video and just having fun with it. But this has been definitely the most time consuming part, which is creating this UI and getting all the very basic stuff done first, so then I can have fun with it after.
And that UI system, this is something from the asset store?
Yeah, I found it on the asset store. I don't know if I can see. It's a simple pixel UI when I downloaded it. It's got a lot of different like boxes you can do, different like rounded or squares. There's like gray ones, white ones. It was just solid, and the health bars as well came from that. And like the other bars, I just really like the look of it. I kind of want this like old-fashioned pixel style, so
Yeah.
it really worked for me.
As when we get to the progress reports, and I'll probably do this with the proposals too, I'm going to post all of them on Brightspace so that you can look at each other's proposals and progress reports. So the idea being that, you know, when you do a progress report and you say, here's this great tool that I found, here's the URL for it, other people will be able to see that when they look in your progress report. So hopefully there'll be some cross-fertilization here among the different assets that we've all encountered. But that's great. Any questions, comments, suggestions for Mr. Apon? That was great. Thank you.
I don't really have a question, but I was debating whether or not to use 3D or 2D, and I've been having trouble finding good 3D assets for what I want. So this was very helpful because I might look doing just pixel art for it, because I think I could do it on my own, but I don't know if I could do 3D things on my own.
Yeah, that was one of the big reasons I went 2D. I find it really easy. Because I usually just start with a black outline and you just fill it in with simple colors. And then there's actually on the website, it has a darkening tool and a lightening tool, which really helps for shading because you can kind of get the almost random different darkening colors instead of having to go through and pick the right one. It's definitely worth it, I'd say.
Yeah, I don't know if mine will look as good as yours do, but I'm hopeful.
Dorothy, do you know where to look now for this?
Yes.
Okay, good, great. And Elijah says, my professor in the new media class showed off this site. It's really nice. So thank you. Any other comments for Mr. Apon? That's great. That's real progress. Lots of progress. Stop sharing screen unless you've got more to show.
Oh, good.
Ms. Boucher, how would you like your name pronounced?
It's Boucher.
Boucher, okay, the French pronunciation.
Yes. So this week for me has been mostly a planning week. So I made a schedule for myself for the rest of the semester. I wrote down like all the in painstaking detail what I need to work on. So I'm going to finally start implementing it this weekend. But I am really excited. I think I figured out mostly how I want the puzzles. Oh, I forgot to recap. I'm doing like the scavenger hunt geocache type mobile game. And I think I figured out what I want to base the puzzles off of. I'll share a screen real quick just to show a picture. So this is one of my favorite geocaches, actually. You had to go around and find all these different cards. There's a pain in the butt, but it was really cool. And then if you put them in certain orders, like for example, if you arrange them so that all the orange numbers are in increasing order, then the blue numbers will give you a set of coordinates to go look at for another clue.
Cool. Very cool.
I know, I love this cache. If you rearrange, looks like the green letters to spell out I see the pattern, then the purple ones give you coordinates. So I think instead of having a ton of interactive puzzles, I'm going to do something like this where you have to go find all these. And then I need to figure out what it's going to lead you to. I haven't looked into yet if I can kind of make like game coordinates within Unity, you know, kind of like following a GPS coordinate in real life. If anyone knows how to do that, hit me up. And I was thinking of, because my advanced topic is just going to be like really complex world generation and graphics. Maybe there can be like some kind of particle system, whether it's colored smoke or mist or something. It kind of highlights where some of these little like numbers are hidden, and then could change color after the player has found it or something to show that it's completed. I don't know, working with stuff like that. I would like there to be a way in the game for it to be able to save all these little numbers when you find them. But that might be biting off a bit more than I can chew. Also, I think it would be hard to do that effectively on a tiny mobile screen, because it is really useful to have these physical cards so you can rearrange them. So I might just say to the user, write these on sticky notes as you go, have fun.
That looks great. That kind of puzzle, it's very complex. So in terms of your coordinates for objects, I mean, you can have a game object at the location of whatever it is, and when they solve the puzzle, they get the transform of that object and could teleport to it or have some pointer in the world that leads them towards it, some arrow that leads them towards it. Is this going to be a 2D game?
3D, yes.
A 3D. And mobile. So you are facing the kind of screen space limitation that you mentioned in a mobile game. I could see this playing in the computer world where, you know, you could actually lay your cards out on your screen and, you know, move them around. That would be the big game, not the big game, but the PC version of the game.
Yeah.
But for mobile, yeah, it's going to be an issue with screen space. But that's great, and I definitely like the idea. These are very attractive looking cards, and you know, you're not in. If you're going to sell this, you probably need to figure copyright with the actual owners of these things. But
I wouldn't use these exact cards. Just something like this style where I might, give a couple numbers and an uppercase, alphabet and a lowercase alphabet or something like that.
I see.
And they'd be like carved into a tree or something. You could go find those. That's why I like the mobile aspect of it, because another thing I did this week was I went back and I made sure that I did, in fact, have all the gyroscope code from previous projects that I thought I did. So I like the idea of we'll be able to physically look around for these things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, this is going to be great. So any questions, comments, suggestions for Abby?
I have a question.
Yes.
This is Dorothy Harris. Would you have, if you had all these different clues and stuff that you find along the way, would you implement something that, let's say you're playing the game and you've gotten 6 of the clues. If you get off, are they going to save your clues, or would you have to start all over and find them again?
Good question, Dorothy.
Yeah. I'm still kind of working out the details of that, which I think I'm going to start implementing the game and then kind of figure that out as I go. I was waiting to implement till I at least knew this much. I think it's going to be a thing where, again, you either just have to keep track of them, but you can go back. It's going to be a world you explore. They're not going to be linear. So if you messed up one, then you just go back and look for it. Or maybe, again, I said we wouldn't have space probably to list all the different little numbers, but maybe at least in an interactive way, but maybe you can just store them somewhere. So if you do lose it, you can just write it back down. Still working on those logistics.
I think the question is, will you be able to pause the game and come back to it and
Oh.
have everything you found. So it's like,
I see what you're
it's persistence.
I
That
hope so.
would be a good feature.
Yes, I hope so. If that ends up being a huge pain, then we'll see how much time that takes. But yeah, that would definitely be great for it to remember the color coding of which ones you found already.
Yeah, yeah. Because I mean, on mobile, you want people to be able to, play it while they're waiting for the bus and then get on the bus and then pick it up again. And
exactly, without having to press a save button, which is my pet peeve with mobile games that make you save. I'm like, no one does that.
Okay. Any other questions for Ms. Boucher? Okay, stop sharing your screen so we can go on to the next. Mr. Campbell, you're up. Are you here? I don't see him. Okay, so Carter. Is Carter here? Oh, this is going fast. Mr. Kluge.
Hi. All right, so I don't really have a whole lot to show off right now. Mostly been doing like research and stuff. I did find a really
Remind us
interesting
of
video
your topic.
on,
Remind us of your topic.
Yeah, so I was going to create like a detailed world. I did find a really interesting video on procedural generation, basically like using Purlin noise and stuff like that. I can put the URL in chat if you guys want to take a look at it at some point. But
is it
mostly I've just been
Sebastian
doing research.
Levieux? Is it Sebastian?
What's that?
Is it Sebastian Levieux?
No, it's actually a different one from the channel Brackeys.
Oh, Brackeys, great. Yeah.
Brackeys.
Yeah. He's retired. He's quit. He's not going to put any more stuff up. He's gone. He's got some job and he's done with Unity, which is a shame because stuff is always clever.
It is because he seems like he really knows what he's talking about, and like it was a really interesting video.
Yeah, he makes things seem simple that actually aren't.
Yeah. I guess another thing I've been thinking about is like creating a theme for my world. I guess I've been thinking about maybe like doing some kind of horror aspect. Because I have some scripts from previous Unity projects that I've done for like enemies that will follow you around and like attack you and deal damage and stuff like that. So I might try to scavenge maybe some of my older projects and see if I can integrate some of those things into this one.
Okay. Good. Any questions? Anything more, Peter?
That's pretty much it.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Kluge? No? Okay, David, you're up.
So a lot of I'm focusing on the dialogue system. Actually, when I was doing research for the week on what, like, if I want to build my own or look for one, I actually realized the one that Unity recommends, which is by Pixel Crushers, they have a huge like library of videos to look at and different components you can use. But that system is actually the system that's used in the game Lake, which gave me inspiration, which I didn't even know in the first place.
Oh, that's cool.
So yeah, so I'm gonna see how they used it. And I'll probably be focusing on that one. I do have to buy it. But a lot of what I've been doing recently is storyboarding, because that's going to be the main focus. I have like 3 completely different ideas of what directions I want to go in. So, and I'm really fighting myself on all of them. I have a set date that I have to pick one of them by. I think it was Saturday, right? Yeah, the 5th. Yeah, I gotta pick one by the 5th, because I know just from the ideas I have on each one that I'm gonna go in many different directions. I want to have at least like 4 different options for each dialogue you get from an NPC. I want different reactions based on what you say. So I know it's gonna be a lot of writing, and gonna be a lot of ideas. So I definitely got to pick it by Saturday, and I don't know what I want to do. I don't favor any of them, but I do like all of them, so it's a good idea. I know like one of them is completely random, like cartoonish world. Not exactly monsters, but very like weird looking characters. Don't make any sense. The other one was a more structured, like I think it was like woodland animals was the idea, and you kind of go through the forest, and that would be a theme. And the third, I wanted something relevant to me if I wanted to pick that. So I'm in one of the fraternities on campus. I thought it'd be really funny if I did like a very mundane, dumbed down like fraternity house where you're just going around and like doing stupid jobs and talking to the other guys. And
On
I thought that would
duty,
be fun.
right? You're,
Yeah, exactly. Cleaning the bathrooms, clean everybody's rooms.
your turn to do the dishes.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. So this dialogue system that Unity recommends, you said it costs money. How much is it?
It's about 85.
Oh my
Right
God.
now I'm trying. Yeah, so I found something where you can get a deal for, I think it's 60 or 50, which I wouldn't mind paying that. 85 really kills me, but I mean, I didn't have to buy any books this semester, so I wouldn't mind paying for it. It is really complex, and I do like everything that like I think I watched about like 2 hours of what you can do with the system. It really makes it like simple user creation where you kind of just it's more focused on like the design of how it looks on the UI, and you just place nodes, and depending on what you say, it's easy for the NPC to react because it's all built in like that.
And this then buys you more time to work on the story.
Exactly, yeah, and designing the world, and I really.
Yeah, okay, well, I don't require that people buy things, but I don't discourage it either, because there's no textbook in this class, so theoretically you've got $100 to spend. Any questions, suggestions, comments for David?
Yeah, this is Apon. After hearing all the ideas, I really think the one that has the most out of like, for humor wise, I feel like the frat one definitely would be the funniest. Just because all like I mean, you also live in a frat, so you know like all the stuff that can happen, and there's a lot more jokes I feel like you can go there with. It's just like this, and kind of like the game you based off of. It's a pretty mundane thing on the surface, but you can have like a lot more in there.
My biggest thing was if I do it like that, I definitely can just design a lot of what I see. So the map, I could just copy the layout of the house and maybe add some additional things. But like, especially characters, like if you talk to people so much, you realize how unique and dumb they are. So it really is like you can get like 20 different characters that are just full of content. So it would be easier for me on that side where it's like creative thought where I really could just like type out what they would normally say.
Elijah, you posted something about Twinery. What's that?
Yeah, so again, in one of the new media classes, we had to do like a storytelling kind of like text adventure game kind of thing. And you may already have your own like way of writing out all of your stuff, but this might be an easy way of like you have your dialogue, and then you have your options, and then like the links in this website like automatically will take you to the next dialogue. So it's just a really easy way of visually seeing a story and like, I don't know, connecting things together. I mean,
that's a good suggestion. Did you get you got the website, David?
Yep, got it down. Yeah, usually what I do for the write is I just make a big board and just really write it out.
Okay, yeah.
Keep it up.
Yeah,
the physical world is a good place to do those kind of things. Okay, and any other questions? And then our last.
I was just gonna say, I also think the frat one would be really, really fun, especially if you're going for the humor in the. And then also, I have a question. would you have all your different options? Like, would they lead to different outcomes of the story, or would it just be like in the moment it leads to a different little interaction and then you're still leading to the same big ending?
So the objective would probably stay the same, but I wanted it to be like, say you say something nasty to somebody else, like I wanted their reaction to be they wouldn't talk to you for the rest of the time. Like you couldn't go back to them. It shuts off certain like objectives that you could have done, but because you did that, like that's what I want to reach for.
Okay.
I had a question. I was wondering if you could link the asset that you're going to use for your dialogue. I'm just kind of curious.
Sure. I think, let me check. I don't have the link for it now. Yep, here we go. It's by Pixel Crushers. So this is what, here we go. Got right here. Copy.
And it's an asset store thing.
Yeah. Yeah, he can get right in the asset store.
Okay,
Sweet,
perfect.
thanks.
You got that then? Okay, anything else? And finally, pride of place, Mr. Hallett. Pride of place is who gets to be last. You know,
Okay.
the pride of place.
I don't have anything to show today, but I can update on my topic. I'm working on Sebastian Lang's articles. I mean, tutorials as well, and scaling back towards just procedural worlds and sort of terrains, etc. And there's a little bit more to it than that, but what I'm interested in is this how to map between a 2D surface and a sphere. So if you have code,
they're great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Sure. But I guess it's yeah.
It's similar to what Arzuski's doing, except it's on a sphere. Yeah, it's the same kind of idea. It's Purlin noise. It's making a mesh. It's putting bumps on it. That Prac World Spheres. You might look at my Spherical Gravity lecture that's on the YouTube, and it's on Cultura.
Okay.
Like I all of the advanced topics I've posted, just me talking to the computer, lectures on them. So you can go and watch them. I may get to them in class here too and do a live presentation of them. But the Spherical Gravity is the gravity that you need for a character to walk around on one of these spherical worlds.
Okay. Yeah.
You might have a look at that.
Okay.
But yeah, definitely, it's definitely a very cool topic. So anything else you want to tell us, or?
No, that's all. I'll try to have more to show next week.
Okay. And any questions for Mr. Hallett? Comments? All right, so I don't see any further questions. So let me share a screen myself here and park this someplace here. So I think back in 3.12, I actually demoed some of this stuff, but I didn't say how it worked. But the Nav Mesh, which is a basic tool in regular Unity, also has some advanced components. These are preview packages that they warn you that they can change. They're currently stored on a GitHub. Here's a link to it. For 2.19 and 2.20, I found the easiest way to install it is to just kind of download the zip file from GitHub, open it, and then drag and drop the different folders that you need into a project window for a game that you want to play. If you happen to be a 2021 person, you can add it as a package through the registry package by name tool. They both appeared to be identical, and here's a link to the documentation for the this expanded Nav Mesh system. Both of the packages come with sets of examples that demonstrate some of the features. So they've got a demo of multiple agent sizes, being able to drop walkable structures, orientation. They have two infinite terrain. Well, they have an infinite terrain. They have walking on a terrain. Both of these, what they do is they don't bake the entire world. They just bake around the character. So you've got a nav mesh around the character, but you haven't gone through the work of baking the entire world, modifying mesh, and of course, a maze crawler dungeon. There are two basic pieces that the nav mesh system has. One, the agent, which of course the old system has, but the other here is a nav mesh surface. And in the old system, you would open the navigation window, you'd select the objects in the world that you wanted to be navigation static, you'd set some options, and you'd bake it, and then you were done and you could play the game, put characters on it, and so forth. But with this nav mesh surface, you can now have a game object in the scene that to which you've added the nav mesh surface component. And it has on it, in its inspector, the tools for baking the nav mesh surface. And so it looks out into the world and sees what's nav mesh static and so forth. And so but it's just a different way of accessing the nav mesh. And the thing that this buys you is that you have access to the nav mesh settings from scripting. So it makes it much, much easier to manipulate your nav mesh. And in particular, it makes it possible for you to bake the nav mesh at runtime, which of course, if you're doing a procedurally generated world that's throwing random numbers, you need to be able to do that. So I've got a little scene over here that is kind of the old way of doing it here. So, I have a navigation window set here, and I have the different objects that have been set to be nav mesh static. And at some point I pressed the bake button and it laid out this nav mesh and all of these links, which for some reason don't work. But anyway, it's set up as a point and click game, so I can kind of point and click and drive my character around. For some reason, the off mesh links don't work, so it doesn't actually climb them. I don't know why. But this is just simple point and click. We've got a mouse. We have an agent, and at some point we set its destination with the hit point from the raycast. So that's all simple, straightforward stuff. You do need this using Unity Engine AI. That's true for the old system too. So the Nav Mesh player component on our player, the agent, includes things like how fast the agent moves, its acceleration. It has various stuff dealing with obstacle avoidance, how big it is, how tall it is, how much computer resources it throws at it, and the priority, which deals with how agents interact with each other, and various stuff about pathfinding, auto repath, area mask, and this auto traverse off mesh link, which didn't work for me. Obstacle avoidance is deals with how agents interact with other agents and with nav mesh obstacles. We'll see nav mesh obstacles as objects that you can move around in your scene and have your character interact with them. And of course, you get to set the radius and height of your character, how much processing power and priority, who has the right of way over who else in agent-agent interactions. I think it's remarkable that these agents see each other as well as things in the world. Let me show you. This is now essentially the same scene, except now I have this empty game object that has in its inspector. This is the Nav Mesh Surface Inspector that has basically the same baking tool that we saw with the normal system. Things like the area that we specify, the agent type, and so forth, all of these. And you can bake it manually here, or as you'll see later, you can bake it from scripting. And this, of course, I won't bother to play this because it plays exactly the same way the old system one works. So with obstacles, there are a couple of options with the obstacles that are interesting. Here, I believe the nav mesh is baked over here. I need this on so that I can see the nav mesh. And with these obstacles set to carve, what this means is that as they move around the world, they carry with them their cutout of the place in the terrain that is walkable. And so the agent is smart enough to go around these obstacles when the opportunity affords it. And here's an example where I'm still using obstacles, but the carving option is not turned on. And so now you see they're not bothering to carve things out. And now the agent, while it's pushed around by these things, it doesn't have the sense to go around them because they're not carvings. So these act as barriers to our character, but they don't actually afford it any information about the changing mesh. Here's an example with a gate where I can go back and forth between these two sides of the world. I'll start there. Oops, made it through. I start going that way, but now it's blocked, so it recalculates, goes back the other way, then the gate opens. So it's doing a lot of intelligent decisions here because this thing is carving. If you do this gate, whoops, I don't want to merge them. If you do this gate without carving, now there's nothing around it. And now it's not nearly so smart. It'll go back and forth across the opening, but it's not smart enough to recalculate and find a better way. And actually the obstacles will push it around and no, it's still stupidly trying to get through that gate over there. So these obstacles are really pretty cool, and the carving has some options, whether it does it just once or whether it's a real-time thing that you would want for a moving obstacle. Now, I mentioned that one of the great points of this is that we can use this to bake the nav mesh ahead of time. I mean, bake it at runtime instead of having to do it as part of the pre-compile here. And so the runtime modifier wall here, see, we're starting off with an empty world and we're generating everything procedurally with this level generator. The level generator has a nav mesh object, that's this thing over here, which hasn't been built yet. It hasn't been baked. And then the thing that we're going to generate for our wall, and a player and a marker that we're going to throw down into the world as well. So it's a relatively dumb maze. This generate level is just going to go through the checkerboard grid of the world, and based on a random value, instantiate or not instantiate a wall object there, and also make our player. So I'll run this, and that maze is generated by throwing these random numbers. In the start, I've got some probability that's apparently exposed. I generate the level, that function I just showed, and then I bake the maze. I bake the nav mesh with nothing more than a build nav mesh command on that nav mesh object, which was one of the exposed variables of my level generator. So that's all pretty cool. We've got this maze, not a very sophisticated maze, but the character moves in among the different things. It knows how to find its way through the world, which is pretty cool. And of course, I think I have a seed set here, so it generates the same thing every time, but you could make it a world. Now, in this example, the prefab that the generator is making is an object that has a nav mesh modifier component on it. And these are kind of like obstacles, but instead what they do is they modify the mesh, and you can you have options to ignore it from the build. I don't know why you do that. You can have it override the area that's already there, and you can specify the type of area that you want it to change it to. And you also actually have something that you can have this affect some agents, but not others. So you could have your monsters not able to cross some barrier and so forth. So that nav mesh modifier is what I'm throwing there. Now, since I'm making it not walkable, I could have achieved the same effect by putting in a prefab with an object that was set to be nav mesh static, and it would achieve exactly the same effect. And I believe here there is a scene here with a static object that the level generator, no, it says wall with modifier. It's not supposed to be that. Now, there's another modifier. Area type. Different areas have different costs that travel across them. So if you were laying out a world, you might have some area that you didn't, that was harder to cross. And so our nav mesh agents would calculate the cost of getting there, and they might decide to take a longer path around to avoid something hard or potentially damaging. The default areas are walkable, which has a cost of 1, the jump, which has a cost of 2, and not walkable, which has a cost of infinity. But we can define 29 others of our own. And as I mentioned, that modifier was not walkable. So it's the same as navigation static. Now, there's another modifier device called the Modifier Volume, which you specify an area for the object. And all of the surfaces that are enclosed in that volume will be modified. And so I've defined a very high cost area called fire with a cost of 500. And I've put an invisible object in it and a particle effect and a box collider set to trigger that's going to damage my character when they go through the fire. And so here we've got the scene, and this is again procedurally generated. So it's using basically the same tool that I showed you before to generate the level. It's just now that the objects it's generating are these fire objects. And I want to be able to see the nav mesh here. So you can see now the fire ones are purple and the walkable ones are blue, and my character tracks in amongst them. I've got a little scorekeeper up here, and as long as I'm making my character go areas where it can get through without touching the fire, there's no penalty. But if I make it go here, it now has to cross the, well, no, it made it in without any penalty, but there it had to cross through the fire. And if I make it go way over here, it's gonna take the long way around the walkable terrain and only cross what fire is absolutely necessary to get there. So a pretty cool trick and possible to do only with this Nav Mesh Modifier Volume, and possible to do in a procedural world only with the build when running. There are other tricks that you can do here with Nav Mesh Links. You saw in the original version that it had a lot of links, but they didn't seem to work. The Nav Mesh Links are little objects here. It's a Nav Mesh Link component that you add to a transform. You can then place it wherever you want to. And these circles have to be placed over a nav mesh. And now our character is capable of jumping across this gap because there's a nav mesh link here that it can cross. And the levels, the links don't have to be at the same level. So here, one circle's on this lower one, the other one's up here. And so my character can actually jump across, jump up over this height barrier as well. And I think you can get ridiculous about setting these things up very, very far. Here are tools for start point and end point. You can set the width of it, which is how wide this link is. So right now it's width 0, which means they have to cross precisely there. But you can make the width 5, in which case it's more like an open door that lets them go through. And there's a cost modifier as well. Here's a cool trick. Whoops. Here's a cool trick that you can do with this. You can, I've got 2 different nav meshes here, one on the horizontal surface and one on the vertical surface, and they were both made the same way. You have to make and bake it on horizontally and then rotate it to have this wall that you can climb on, but and they're connected by a little link here, but my character is now going to jump up to the wall and walk around in the world. And of course, I got carried away with that. And I have this three-dimensional world with meshes where my little character who's on the red headed up the yellow and across the green. So all of these are identical and just made the same way and baked in the old-fashioned way, but put across different worlds. So let me shut that one down. So these links, they have to be hand edited. I suppose there's probably some way to procedurally set them up, but I haven't figured out how to do that yet. We have to specify the start and end points. They can be done through the inspector or by manually dragging them around with gizmos. The odd bugs that disappeared when Unity upgraded. So the other thing, of course, that we want to be able to do is use an animated character. One starts off with a basic scene here. I've got a nav mesh surface and I've got a player, and the player has a nav mesh agent. And I'm going to modify this to work with the low man character, this little animated character here who can run around in our world and do appropriate stuff. So the way to set this up, I'm basically leaving that little cube alone that I used in the first example, mouse click follower, and I've removed everything but the nav mesh agent component. I've left that alone because that's the thing that is going to control this thing. And the player controller script is a little bit different. So I'm moving to a version 2 here so that I don't break anything. Here's where this might be relevant to, I forget who it was now, Mr. Story, I think, with your puzzle game. This Unity standard assets character third person gives you access to the third person character, which is a script component that is provided by Unity. And it's an example of a motor script. All of the movement and animation of the character is taken care of by the third person character. And one then writes a controller that for a player controlled character would have input horizontal and verticals, or an AI script that would make the character chase and shoot our player. And it's all done by a single public function in the third person character, the move function. And the move function just takes a vector of desired velocity, and there are two Booleans for whether you need to crouch or jump. So you have access to crouching and jumping in the move. But this then takes all the burden of dealing with animations and so forth off the designer here. All you have to write is a controller script for it. And that's what we're doing here in the controller script. In this player controller 2 script. So in one of the other things that we need to do is turn off the agent's update rotation, because the move script, the move function in the third person character is going to take care of rotating our character. So we're just turning off the nav mesh agents update rotation. In the update function where we're doing the mouse button that points and clicks and sets the destination, here I want to inform that third-person character script of the move that I want it to make. And I'm basing this on whether the agent's remaining distance is greater than the agent's stopping distance, all things that we set in the agent's inspector. And if the distance is greater, then we call that third-person character script move function with the agent's desired velocity. The agent wants to go a particular direction and a particular velocity. And the false is the crouching and jumping options of our character. And of course, if we've reached the stopping distance, the agent has stopped. And so the character move gets a vector 0 and our character stops and everything is well and good. So to that player, we're going to add the low body's FBX model as a child, take off its animator component, and you can add your player 2 controller script, and you can add that third-person character script, which is in the standard assets. And this third-person character script has directives in it that require a rigid body, a capsule collider, and an animator, and it automatically adds those things. The animator, you'll have to add the animator controller and the avatar, both of which are in the Lowman folder. And you probably have to fiddle with the capsule collider to make sure that it fits your character. I found that moving the center up to 1 and giving it a height of 2 seemed to work. And so my little Lowman very happily runs across the scene and goes to the destination spot that's been set. I was kind of interested to see how the Lowman worked on a link. And so here now I have some links that go up to the various surfaces here. And so it behaves kind of the same way it did before, except when I ask it to go up a link, it jumps and it jumps across that link. And where's another one that it can go to? Oh, those are the only 2 that I have. So it jumps across the link, and I don't know if you can see that, but it does have an in the air animation. You can't see the links if I'm in here. So it does have an in the air animation that is in that controller. The animator for the third-person character, the Lowman, is pretty complicated. Have a look at it. And you can also look at the third-person character's motor script to see how they did it, because it's a rather clever and versatile way to have a motor that drives your object around and then a controller that sets the value that tells the motor what to do through a standard kind of function. So I made reference to different kinds of agents. We might have a small agent here in this procedurally generated world. I have 2 different agents, a big agent called the ogre and a smaller agent called a humanoid. And in this version, they're both using exactly the same nav mesh. And so the ogre is able to squeeze through these openings just fine. And so everyone's kind of following the same path as we go around here. But we can have multiple nav mesh here. So I have a nav mesh for a human, which has, no, I need the inspector. I have a nav mesh for a human that has a radius of 0.5, and I have a nav mesh for an ogre that has a radius of 1. So I'm going to procedurally bake both of these. My level mesh generator has both the nav meshes that we wanted to build at runtime, and it also has both a player, an ogre, and a marker. So now when I run this, let's not maximize. Now when I run this, I can see that there actually are two nav meshes here. There's one that goes kind of through these gaps with that are wide enough to open it, but a second one on top of that that doesn't connect through here because it's asking for 1.5. And so when I ask my characters to move around here, notice the humanoid took the shortcut through there, but the ogre had to go around. And over here, my humanoid is going through the narrow passageways, and the ogre can't actually get there. There's no actual path that the ogre can use to get to that particular spot. So very cool that you can make multiple meshes that allow for different size characters to traverse the meshes. These are the modifications to the level generator. All I did was build both the meshes and instantiate the ogre as well as the player.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
In theory, could you put like the carving element on both the human and the ogre, so that, like, the human will carve a place for the ogre's nav mesh and the ogre will carve a place for the, that way they avoid each other?
Yeah, I think so. I think you can. And you saw in the obstacles also, there's like a culling mask for what kind of characters it'll carve for.
Right.
So you could actually have an obstacle that would not let the ogre through, but would let the humanoid through.
Right.
Or vice versa. So
Cool.
yeah, pretty cool. Pretty cool. Okay, so so I think that's all I've got in this little section. I want to quickly show you some waypoints. So this was these were, instead of point and click, these were waypoints. And I'll just show these examples. It's going from one waypoint to another, and I believe all it's doing is in the update function, it's checking remaining distance less than stopping distance, in which case it's incrementing the waypoint number, making sure to wrap around and setting the destination to the new waypoint. So all of that's pretty simple. There's an example where we're doing a random waypoint. And I believe I was kind of stress testing this. So here's a lot of wandering AIs. Wandering, I believe, in the sense that each one is throwing kind of a random spot on the map that it's trying to go to, or maybe it's a random waypoint, I forget which. But they're all heading out into the world, going different places. They're all paying attention to the fact that this area is hard to traverse, and that there's a little gate here opening and closing. So they're all figuring out the shortest path, taking into account cost and so forth. I think in one of these, yeah, in this one, I'm also showing the path with this line renderer. And if you look at your nav mesh, what it is it's a bunch of triangles and rectangles with straight edges. And the path is defined by the vertices that it has to cross to get to the particular spot. Its path is defined by those corners. And having access to those corners, which are from the Nav Mesh agent's path, which we get from agent path, we have the corners. And so I can calculate the distance that my character has to travel in order to get to its goal by just going through and adding up the distance between each of the different corners of that path. And I can then go out and put those path corners on the line renderer that is connecting my two. And so I have this path that that it shows what the character is headed for. And sometimes when the path is stale or some other things are happening, the path disappears, it loses its corners. I use this feature in a maze game. This is the maze game. I'm almost out of time here. But this is a self-running maze generated procedurally. So it's a procedurally generated maze. And here it is self-running. So it just, its goal is over here. And it procedurally generates the nav mesh, and the little character is headed out throughout the world, headed for its goal. And I also have a point and click version of this where it has this original goal, but if I point over here or over here or over here, it recalculates the path and heads that direction. So all very, very cool. And you can also stop the agent, in which case it no longer moves the character. And so you can leave your character with a Nav Mesh agent in the control of the player while still calculating the path that the agent has to take in order to get to it. So here, all I've done is in the update function, I'm testing to see if the agent is stopped, and if it isn't stopped, I'm going to set that to be true. So I'm turning off the agent's movement of the character, and the movement of the character is going to be handled by the player. Whoops. L. So here now I just have that same line renderer that showed in the overhead view, and it now leads my character through the maze by connecting the corners of all those different points. And of course, if I ignore its advice and head off in some other direction, it's constantly recalculating the path and will find the path that I want it to go. And of course, you can do other things here in the dark. I've put lights at those corners. So I have these lights that draw me forward through the scene just by putting lights at the corners. And of course, these are dynamically set up and placed around the world. Here's the same thing with particle effects that are set at the corners of the maze. And I think it only sets particle effects at the next 5 or so. So you can see them over here in the map down view. And of course, there's alone in the maze with no helpers as options. So again, and you can only do this with the procedurally generated maze if you wanted to do that. Now, the last thing I want to do is stress test this thing. So here is, it was already running when I left it there. Here are crowds of, whoops, I want to run it. Here are crowds of instantiated characters. These are waypoint characters. They're just going to the target that's indicated by their little hats. So the red ones are going to the yellow and the blue ones are going to the green. And when they get to the waypoints, they turn around and go to the other one. And so this is kind of stress testing this, and with Zoom running and all of those other games up, we're getting a reasonable frame rate. Here's an example that kind of demonstrates priority. The red ones have been given priority, and so they have the right of way, and so they're just going to barge right through the blue ones, and the blue ones have to get out of the way. And so you start to see some interesting emergent behavior where the blue ones kind of end up out at the edge of the crowd and so forth. And there are examples with obstacles, just like we had before. Obstacles are expensive, particularly if it has to recalculate the path. So notice I don't have as many players out here. But these moving obstacles open and close gates, and the characters adapt to that. And then I have some sequential, I have more waypoints and random ones. And of course, I decided to make my characters attack each other. So they have little guns that point out their front with a kind of range, a field of view that they can fire their guns, and a certain probability of killing one of the enemies if they're in front of them. You see little puff particle effects when they kill each other. So the reds and the blues are in the process of decimating the different crowds. These two, I think, are both going back and forth between the waypoints. And you can do this with obstacles. You can do it with where they counter rotate. So here I believe they're going to go in opposite directions around the waypoints. And so they, the two armies kind of crash into each other. An interesting one is where you they're going the same direction, so they're kind of chasing each other. When the agents are instantiated, they're given a speed, and it's random between two different values. So some of them are fast and some of them are slow. And the fast ones tend to catch up with the slow ones of the preceding army. But if they go too fast and they get up into the cluster with a red army behind them, they'll get picked off. So this one's really interesting to watch because of the evolution of these two racing armies. And instead of targeting waypoints, I have what I call a hunter that targets targets individual enemies. And so the little gizmos there that are showing who each one is targeting, these hunters are targeting and chasing specific enemies. And of course, they get involved with, I don't know why that one's headed off. Oh, there he goes. He found something to chase. So we have priority, we have ability to set speed, we have our warriors can either follow waypoints or they can follow members of the other team, target mode. They can target randomly or sequentially, and they can target the original location of the target at the time it was set, or dynamically follow with active target settings. And these are all things that are in the different prefabs that I've got going here. So I'm going to stop there with 1 minute remaining in class and entertain any questions. And I will post these on the Google Drive for your enjoyment. Peter left for his last class. That's fine. Yep. Okay.
Thank you, Professor.
And any questions? This Nav Mesh component thing is well worth obtaining. It's much more powerful than the default Nav Mesh that you get in the world. Definitely worth the download. Bye. I'm going to stop recording here.